Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2 o'clock. It is now time to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the City of Franklin to order. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the September 12th, 2019 Finance meeting. Hope everyone's had a chance to look at those. Any corrections, deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion
Second.
to approve, yeah.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next item on the agenda is report on the city's other post-employment benefit liability. Christine, you're up.
Well, thank you. I have some guests who are the experts on this item, but I'll do an introduction for them and
Okay.
also give some background for our committee. Accounting standards require every 2 years for us to have a report prepared by licensed actuaries. It's actually related to Accounting Standard 75, and we call this other post-employment benefits. And for the city of Franklin, our only other post-employment benefit are retiree health benefits that we offer. If a retiree has a significant length of service, we do have a plan in which retirees do receive a 40% city contribution toward their retiree health premiums until they reach the age of 65. At the age of 65, retirees completely exit our insurance. And so there is, not every retiree chooses to participate in retiree health care. It certainly is a much higher contribution than it is for active employees. It's the retiree pays 60%, him or herself, as the city contributions 40%. But the accounting standards for a number of years have required the actuaries every 2 years to prepare this report for use in our audits. And we have always done that the way we were instructed to do so. You will recall that we went out for qualifications, and we did change actuaries, both for our closed pension plan as well as for our other post-employment benefit reporting. And we chose the firm Finley to be our new actuary. And this is the first time that Finley has prepared this report. They came on board the 1st of January with us, and they have gone through this year as a transition. They certainly have due diligence when they take over an account for the first time, and they worked through that process very, very well with the work to take all of our data from our previous actuary, all the new information from staff, and to begin preparing the report for this year's audit. We did want to ask them to come in and speak with you today and present, because we are making what's called a change of assumption in this year's report, and this is going to be based on their professional recommendation as well as the professional recommendation of our external auditor, Crossland, who we have consulted with. And this change in assumption is going to result in a significant increase in our retiree health liability. It is something that we're going to let our experts talk about how they came up with the math, but certainly, our plan is not it's not what we would consider a rich plan, but we do want to make sure that all of our assumptions are correct and are in accordance with what is industry practice for actuaries, and that's what we are doing this time. However, we certainly want to take that these are numbers that, if you look at them just separate, they are large numbers, but when you compare those to places who truly give retirees free health insurance or have extensive benefits until for their entire lives, this is still a plan that is not considered extraordinary for others who look at our plan. So I think with that, I probably need to let our experts give their assessment of their work for us this year, and then we'll have some dialogue as well. But I'd like to introduce from Finley. You have met Kevin Sullivan. He actually came into our pension committee and has been there a couple of times and works with our closed pension. And his colleague, Lauren Chrisman, who was also with the Finley office here in Williamson County. And I'm going to turn this over to them to, talk about what their process has been this year.
Hi, Lauren. So thank you for having me, first of all. Glad to be here. So I guess the process this year is we took over we're talking about specifically retiree medical. We took over the retiree medical OPEB evaluation from ACUF this year. So this is the first time we were doing it. So we did definitely a deep dive into all the assumptions and all the data, just to make sure everything made sense, made sure we understood the plan provisions, and everything like that. And everything looked pretty good. We updated a number of different assumptions, including mortality, termination rates, different things like that. And everything seemed to be pretty on track with what ACUF did, except for one assumption, which was the aging of the claims. So under GASB 75, there is a requirement that you recognize different costs for retirees at different ages. So that's saying like a 20-year-old person would cost something different than, a 65-year-old person. And so you have to recognize that difference in cost according to the standard. So when we went in and kind of looked at the aging assumption, our industry standard, I guess you could call it, that we use is what's called the Yamamoto aging table. And so that is a table that comes from a study that the Society of Actuaries did back in 2013. So it was actually a comprehensive study of all medical costs ranging from birth to death. And within that study, there is a table of aging factors to say what the age will be, or what the cost will be at each age, and the difference in those costs at each age. And so we've kind of implemented that table with all of our clients, including Metropolitan Nashville, Metro Public Schools, and that's kind of the industry standard that's expected now. And so that has been implemented for the city of Franklin now, but it did have a very large impact just due to the comparison of the prior aging table that was being used. So I'll kind of stop there. Does anybody have any questions?
And I'll give the background. Laura did one great job explaining what the change of the table, what the table is and what the change is. We did ask our previous actuaries what was the source for the table that was in the prior reports, and it's actually a table that's internal to ACUF. It's our first questions, of course, were to Lauren and one of her other colleagues within Finley. Are you familiar with this table, perhaps? And they were not familiar with it, which doesn't mean that other people could not have been, but certainly their firm was not familiar. But ACUF did confirm that it was a aging table that was prepared within their own firm rather than an actuarial industry best practice table. When we certainly sat down very quickly with our auditors, Crossland, who that is part of their job, is to look at these assumptions and give opinion or to give review. And they see this Yamamoto table throughout other audits that they perform, and that they were, as a firm, they preferred going to this table because it is something that they see as being consistent.
Well, they couldn't have gone to the other table, right? I mean, the table that ACUF was using that was internal to ACUF, they couldn't have gone to that table then. You didn't have.
Well, we certainly, when we went through our process of qualifications, Finley was selected because of their qualifications in this industry, and we did not ask them to go against what they believe is the professional standard.
That's what I'm saying. You went to the table that's industry standard. You didn't have access to the other table anyway, so there was no way you could go to it. Okay, I'm wondering.
As a firm, they certainly reviewed the prior reports from ACUF,
right,
because that was part of their review process. But no, they did not, because it wasn't an industry table. It was a proprietary to ACUF. It wasn't something that they had not been in any part of the development of the ACUF table.
No other actuary would have had access to this table. That's
We-
what I guess.
Yes, sir.
We
Let me- let me-
might have been able to use the table, but we couldn't support how the table was constructed
Okay.
because we didn't have access to the data that they used to construct the table. So we would have been able, we could have used it, but we wouldn't have been able to really support it
Right.
and comment on the accuracy of the table.
And quite frankly, put a little finer point on it, we feel much more secure, comfortable using something we have, has more of an industry standard, has
Right.
more of a backing in that way, as we move forward. So to me, that answers it for me.
And that's, yeah, thank you. That was the point I was trying to get to,
Yep.
maybe, hopefully. But,
Got it.
And if I can provide just a, little context, certainly we last year, the last report for, the last report ACUF did, we had liabilities of about $5.5 million. This new report from Finley is $20.2 million for liability. And we have a little over, somewhat over 700 employees. This is only a program for full-time employees when they reach retirement. We have we'll say a little over 700 employees. We look at, there's a neighboring city to us, which has about half the employees that we do, that has liability of 14 million. And now, all these plans can be a little different, but certainly we look at these other, we've been looking at, we haven't had a time to, and we're going to spend in 2020 doing a comprehensive analysis, but certainly we have looked at other cities and how many employees they have, and if they have plans, at least that cut off at age 65, so we know we're not looking at plans that go on significantly longer. But our liability does line up with using this industry standard table. Our liability does line up from my first review closer to what these other cities that have probably fairly similar plans are closer to this type of liability rather than a much lower liability. And we're going to, as staff, spend time next year to bring you back a report that's more comprehensive. Right now, we've been going through the accounting exercise because we need this for our audit. Kevin and Lauren may have, they certainly work in this industry and can talk just a little bit about what they see to try to put some sort of comparison of this new liability number.
Oh, I was just going to say, I remember from earlier retirement requirements we had, that there were people who could have retired very, very young, and some did, because all it required was really 25 years of service. And so, I mean, they could have retired, like you want to say, at age 45 even, under something like that. And I'm not sure I ever found in here how many people at a certain age are retired now under that, and then how many, then we went from like 2006 to 2017 with different requirements, and then after January 1st, 2017.
Yes, you're looking at something that is different in this report from the last time, because what Finley added in was that we do have another group of covered employees, and that's the group from that's been hired since January 1st of
Right.
17, which are actually under a different retirement
Indeed.
spectrum.
Indeed.
Those are the stated retirement employees, so that's a 30 years of service or age 60. And Finley added that in this year. There is one group that did have the 25 and out, but then there was another group that had the 25 and age 55. So the complexities of our closed plan do factor into this analysis, as well as that something that Lauren and I and Mike Lowe have spoken about is that all of our new hires are going into this TCRS plan that has the 30 years of service, and that over time that it's going to help us over time. But of course, medical expenses are they do increase over time as well. But certainly going into the state retirement plan does help contain liabilities on the retiree health plan as well.
Let me ask you, does TCRS have age 60 or 30 years of service where they pay medical for people? I mean, I'm a retiree from TCRS.
And you were on the state, and
I was
as a
on the
state
state,
employee.
a
And
state
there's
employee,
different-
right.
There's several different tranches of retirement within TCRS, and
But
state
which,
employees, no, there is a group of state employees who were eligible for some subsidy. I mean,
Correct, I don't have access to
Yeah.
it, but there is some portion of those retirements.
I don't ever remember at the time that I was employed by them ever having anybody talk with me about early retirement where they had medical, because I had known some other people, for instance, people that worked for the Franklin Special School District could
Yes,
retire early and get medical
and that's the-
benefits, but I
the
don't
school
remember.
The school district tranche
that's
of
totally different.
TCRS does have some options for state health insurance. The political subdivision, which we are considered political subdivision, does not, so.
That's what I was
our
thinking, they
future-
did not have the extra medical, if you know, I think if you retire from them, you just pay it until you get to be 65.
But school district employees are different than regular local employees under TCRS.
So the school district subsidized the medical payments.
Wait,
Every
that
school
was,
district's
is different, that's
Some of the
right.
school districts choose to be on state insurance, and then others do not, because there actually are state rules about medical insurance for school teachers. They have minimums, they get involved in in medical benefits offered on the school district side. The state does not get involved with the local subdivisions, political subdivisions on medical benefits. So it's not really the state. What matters for this analysis, Lauren, is that we have the TCRS rules for retirement. The 30 years and age 60 is what counts for this analysis. There's really no, none of those employees are going to be looking to the state to buy retiree health insurance.
So, just backing up a little bit, take an employee that's on the old plan that retires at 55, 30 years, 55, whatever. What is their liability on the medical insurance from 55 to 65? What is the city's, what is theirs?
In that case, the retiree pays 60% of the premium, and the city is 40%. It's a significant contribution. It's more than what the actives pay. So it is a bridge program until Medicare.
And we just modified that within the last year to go to a percentage. We had done a fixed dollar amount. So over time, that percentage declined. And so we made the decision to select a percentage share, kind of like we do with our employees. Obviously, it's a much different calculation, but to just, that way it would be consistent over time in terms of the share the city paid and the share the retiree paid.
So I guess basically we're just at the accounting phase where we've delivered the bad news. And now next year we start looking at, I guess, possible solutions, comparing ourselves to other cities, what they subsidize.
We acknowledge that this is a change, a significant change in liability. So we're looking at this at a couple. We wanted to bring in to explain the math of how this change occurred. But as staff, we're going to be reviewing to put a context around it. And right now, my general context is that we are now we now have an actuarial report that's completely within industry standards. We've learned a great deal about the mathematics behind our plan during this process, but staff's going to be coming back to this committee in the first part of 2020 to provide you that context, because you certainly can't just compare us to maybe a city of 100 employees, because we have 700 employees, but we want to find some comparables that are other cities that you can be able to see where, and certainly if the intention is to provide a bridge plan, this is still a bridge plan. We would not describe this as a plan that's anything other than a bridge to Medicare that is an option for employees who are retirees who are looking to do so. But this increase in liability was not due to a significant increase in benefits, because that was not occurring. This is actually a change in assumption, as the actuaries explained and our auditors have approved.
Ultimately, these numbers are just our estimate of what the plan will cost as it is. So nothing here really changes the cost either for the city of Franklin or for the employees in providing the benefits. It's just an updated estimate of what those benefits, as they're currently written, will cost.
So how do you carry those, on the books then, relative to a budget item that we'll have coming up in February, March, and April of next year?
Well, that's an excellent question, because of course, we actually provide for the expenses for retiree medical in our annual budget as what is what cash we anticipate spending on employee medical, on retiree medical. We certainly, this does not change necessarily. We currently have about 38 to 40 retirees who are on the plan. That changes over time because people are reaching age 65 and dropping off, or for budget purposes, it's going to look the same because we're going to look to see who's currently on the plan, how close are they to 65, and who's getting ready to retire may be coming on. So, on a cash basis for the near future, for this next budget, we'll still be looking at what the actual expenses would be. This is our audits are prepared on a different accounting. That's a modified accrual accounting. There are entries that are non-cash related within our audit, and that's what for at the time right now, this is actually affecting our audited financial statements. And November 21st, next time that this committee gets together, our auditors will be here, and they will bring this up to you, I expect, as something that for the auditing purposes that has, and we've already certainly incorporated these entries into what they are reviewing now, but for auditing purposes, it's non-cash, but the change in liability. But for our budget purposes, we still budget what we anticipate will be medical expenses for retirees who are on the program, and we record the actual expenses in the year in which those occur.
And that's a projection of liability that we will occur over many years and many years out in the future. So it's really something we are aware of. It's something we have periodically talked about when we talk about the structure of our reserves and how we want to classify or not classify some of those reserves. So this is all still going to be part of that same discussion as we think about that going forward. It is a revised and obviously a larger number. We're glad that we have that, know that now, and we'll just plan accordingly. And as we talk about and look at our reserves and our targets and our reserves, this will be yet one of many factors that we look at still.
So you anticipate another little sentence or two on the audit? Another little bullet point or two
We've
down
had
through
some.
that? Okay.
Yes, sir. It will certainly be noted.
Yes.
And do we know, what was our amount last year? I guess that 60% on those 40, I mean, roughly $500,000, is that? I'm
Oh,
guessing?
for
Good question.
insurance.
Good question.
Medical insurance for retirees, what did we pay?
Is it 600,000? It's in your report.
There were so many numbers in here,
Yeah.
even though I like numbers, I just,
They're all in.
Yeah, I think it's the 451,000.
Just under 500,000.
It had been 600,000, I think, the year
It
prior.
was 600,000 in the 18.
Yeah. And you mentioned 40 people on the plan right now. Do we see that being somewhat level, or that could
That's
spike
also a
up?
good
Or
I think it's going to gradually grow over time. One of the things we did that helped, you saw that cost went down, adding the +1 option helped a lot of folks. They were buying a family when they really only needed to cover one person. And by providing that lowered some costs to the retiree and helps us a little bit too. We're not planning on a family coverage when it's really just two people. So that I think has helped a little bit too. So, and I was appreciated by the retirees when we had that additional tier or option for them.
But it has been my experience, because we're talking about a smaller group, that there are fluctuations, because it is when we have 30, if you have between 35 and 45 people, certainly, a couple of people having bad, difficult years, you will have some variations, because it's not a statistically large group. the way our actives can be for healthcare. So it's probably always going to be a fairly small group because we do end the coverage at age 65, and people's choices about when to retire is a pretty personal decision depending on where they are in their life, in their personal lives. So, it's always going to be a pretty moving group as people perhaps retire mid to late 50s or early 60s, but then at 65, they move on to Medicare.
You've just got a larger employee base, so I think you are going to see some growth, but yeah, I don't think it's going to spike or anything, but I think you'll see some natural growth because we just employ a good number of people more than we did 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
One more comment. I think I have read that in recent years, people are working past 65, most certainly.
Oh, yeah.
And some even older than that, So I was wondering whether there would be as many people, who took very early retirement the way I know some people here did. I mean, truly, after the 25 years, they were going to get on this and be on it for quite a number of years before they reached 65. And so I'm just wondering if that might have an effect in the long run. I don't know whether this is just a short-time thing or not, but what I have read says that people are working at least to 65, if not definitely past that.
Well, certainly many places saw folks work longer after the retirement accounts hit 2008 and 2009, and they weren't able to retire as quickly, even if they had a guaranteed pension. That pension was one piece of their retirement package. So we've seen those same trends, but certainly that group that could go out very young, that was closed off quite a while ago. So anyone that's been hired in the last number of years, I mean, that was changed even before we went to TCRS, that you didn't have
Yes.
the 25 and out. So that was a group that we've not hired anyone else under those terms for some time.
Probably even to Ann's point, if people do retire from the city and they go work for another agency or state, or whatever, they may hop on that plan if they're subsidizing it more than 60%. So it may be only the people that are truly retired that are still taking the retiree health benefits.
So, and I don't want to dwell on this, so on the early, 25 and out, what was the medical cost to the employee then, early? 2003.
We do have one small group that has more subsidy than the rest of them. And there's very few people that are in that
Still on that?
program. And I believe there was it was less than 5.
And that's a similar payment to what we do with our
Actives.
employees, our active employees.
Because
That's a
they
very
would
small
have
group.
already
Yeah.
reached 65.
Well, everyone goes off at 6.
They have to go off at 65,
right,
yeah,
that's what I'm
so, yeah.
But there's now a small group that's on it's a,
62?
yes. But that's a small group.
So at 20 years and 62, you could get basically the employee rate till you hit the 65. So it's a fairly small window with a fairly small group.
Okay.
But almost all are on the plan that has the 40% city subsidy.
Any other questions, comments?
Please don't. They had.
I'm not sure who you mean by messenger, so no.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Good report.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Let's look at the next item on the agenda, and that's a report from Chartwell Hospitality regarding the Cool Springs Conference Center.
May I give introductions while they're
Yes, you
settling
may.
in? We are happy to have with us today from Chartwell Hospitality. We have Matt Lahiff, and he's the general manager of the Marriott Cool Springs. And we have Andy Duncan, who is also one of the administrators with Marriott Cool Springs. and has served as the interim general manager a couple of times. So Andy knows the operations of the hotel and the conference center very well, along with Matt. And of course, we always invite the operator of the conference center to be with us during budget season. And budget season is always just as we know, is a long, busy time for this committee. And they certainly are always willing to come and be with us during that time, but it doesn't really give the committee, as well as the Chartwell staff, a chance to really have some time to have some dialogue, and also for them to present their with a little bit more information about what's going on at the conference center. And so we invited them back here in October. I believe on November 1st, or is it December 1st, is the one-year anniversary of November 1st, very soon, is the one-year anniversary in which Chartwell has been the owner and operator of the Marriott Cool Springs, and then operator of the conference center. So hopefully it's a good time for Chartwell as a company to assess what has been their first year of experience. Andy was with the conference center before Chartwell. He's now a Chartwell employee, but he has a breadth of experience with the building and with the nature of the operations there. And we're glad that he's with us. So we did, and I did, is in conveying to them some things to prepare. First of all, is for them to look at, be able to present to you what they have seen from the financial operations for their first year. As well as some of the trends in the region. Chartwell is a deep company, provides hospitality throughout the country, but also within the Nashville area. They're headquartered here in Franklin. They would have some commentary on their first full year here, as well as the building itself. This building's 20 years old, and they invited me over earlier this year to look at some aspects of the building that they wanted me to see, as well as give them a chance to talk a little bit about the building, which I believe everyone here probably at least a couple times a year goes over to luncheons or events. So, but to hear from the perspective of the operators who are managing that center. So, with that, I'll turn this over to Matt and Andy.
Well, thank you for having me. And Andy, I think the last time I sat here, I was a month into this job. But it's good to see all of you. I know that I've seen a lot of you around at the hotel and around town at different events, so thank you for having us. I wanted to kind of outline four particular things: the fiscal year 2018 and 19, and then where we're at Q1 through this fiscal year. Some market trends and turn down business, which I think is important to the growth of this area and the growth of Nashville itself, and then the property improvements that we see coming on the horizon. Just to start with the 2018-19, this is a real high-level, quick snapshot of how we looked. We did total revenue in the conference center of $7.8 million to a budget of roughly $7.7 million. Our total net operating income, this is prior to capital reserves, was $1,002,290, or 12.74%, to a budget of $828,000, or 10.76%. So overall, it was in our estimation, a fairly successful year for the conference center. As long as it's, the profit is above where we have estimated, I think it's a good year. Our financial summary for 2019 and 20. I know that July was a rough month, and it usually is in midsummer, and that's just the nature of the business. But we've come back strong for the last 2 months of the quarter. We're going to finish it, or we finished at $1.8 million in total revenue with a net operating income of $209,000. I think I just signed the checks for $68,500 for the city and $68,500 for the county. You'll probably receive that later this week or early next week. I think they cut on yesterday. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. But it's good for all of us. We did see 25,860 covers pass through the conference center for the first quarter. So that's a strong presence. I mean, there's a lot of people that pass through there, whether it be local or statewide, which is a lot of what we do, and some national. So. A little bit about the market. Any questions on the revenue for those?
How
how do you arrive, at the guest cover? Do you, I mean, it's just, each conference has so many people that sign up and you
Right.
just add those numbers and.
So what we track, and that's how we bill, so we bill by the cover, it's always a per head charge to the customer. So we, on our P&L statement, I think it probably shows on yours, it's like the third page of the food and beverage area or somewhere in that section. You'll see a average check, you'll see, it'll break it down by segment, it'll break it down by whether it's a coffee break, a breakfast, a lunch, a dinner, a reception, and it'll show you the average check and then how many covers pass through for that. Yep. So what we've noticed over the last year, and really I can give you some numbers from the past few years, and then our particular with Chartwell here for the last year. So since November 1st of 19, Chartwell has serviced. I'm sorry, that's a typo. It's supposed to say 18. Since November 1st of 18, Chartwell has serviced 431 group conventions, which means they're corporate type conventions that have a sleeping room component to it for the hotel side. We've also serviced 408 local social events, totaling 61,204 attendees through the conference center for that year. That's attendees, that's not covers. So these covers are a lot more because those attendees, one attendee could be a breakfast cover, a lunch cover, a dinner cover, so that could be triple that amount. I wanted to really focus on the turn down business. Over the last 3 years, the conference center and the hotel has turned down 477 events, and the reason for this turn downs is either due to space availability or availability restrictions or space availability. I mean, if we don't have it, we can't sell it. So a lot of times during midweek, especially you're looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that conference center is full. And then when we get into the association business, which is our largest group piece, it generally falls on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So and those conferences take up a lot of space. The biggest component of it is on the associations, there's vendors. We don't have enough vendor space. We stack the reception corridor, we put them in the lobby, we put them in, wherever we can put them. We just don't have the space that we need for some of these larger conventions. And I think if you remember a year ago, I think that it was announced that I came from the Embassy Suites in Murfreesboro. There's 45,000 square feet of meeting space there. We're roughly 25,000. And then their reception areas are massive. So those corridors can hold, 100 different vending booths. We just can't do it. So we lose a lot of business to Murfreesboro, and then we lose a lot of business to downtown, like the City Center or the Renaissance Hotel, which has a large function space, soon to be the Hyatt Grand that's going to be opening. So we just simply can't compete in some aspects. But just so you see the growth of it, in 2017, there were 76 events that were turned down. In 2018, 106. In year-to-date, in 2019, we've turned down 276 events. So just to give you an idea. The largest mix of business that I mentioned earlier is association, followed closely by corporate business. 3-day conferences is generally the typical, coming in on a Tuesday, out on a Thursday, or coming in on a Friday, out on a Sunday. We call shoulder nights Mondays and Thursdays. Sundays to a point as well. So Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. Those are the hardest nights to fill. So we start to dabble in catering events like Dinner Detectives that are here once a month now. They don't have any sleeping rooms, but they go to the conference center or to the hotel side, depending on the size. And it's it's ancillary revenue that we didn't see before. So we're willing to figure it out and put money in wherever we can. This is not part of your presentation. I just pulled this off right before I left. But I wanted to give you an idea of how we're pacing for next year. And please understand that the hotel runs off of a calendar year, so we have, but I'm doing budgets all year round. So I do, the conference center budget, the fiscal side, and then I do the hotel budget, which I'm working on now. From a pace perspective, if I look at just the calendar year for 2020, our catering revenue on the books right now is this is for the conference center only, by the way, $2,542,000. Same time last year, we're beating that number by $452,000 right now. We also have tentative revenue on the books of $276,000. In addition to that 452 over last year. The tentative business in our world means that we have been asked for contracts and we've sent them out for signature. We were waiting for them to come back. They're never marked as definite until it's signed, sealed, and delivered, and there's a signature on the contract. We also have prospect business of 246,000, which is people that are interested or have expressed interest but haven't asked for a contract yet. That's really an iffy number. I mean, you might turn 50% of that, you might turn 60% of it, because generally they're shopping all the hotels in the area or the market. So, but it looks like it's a really decent pace for the conference center for 2020. Of course, all that traffic on this last page requires us to maintain this building, this aging building. I think that through the last renovation, we've done a great job. There are still some things that are going to be required. The first section, the required property improvements, are through the Marriott contract. The renovation of the public restrooms, both the hotel side and the conference center side. These are rough estimates. We don't have contractual numbers yet. We don't have bids yet. $100,000. Repair and replace banquet meeting room doors and install RFID locks. If you look at the doors, and I know you walked through with us, they're pretty rough. 20 years of abuse, 20 years of moving in and out with functions and conferences. They're not cheap. That's estimated to be about $300,000. A project we're working on right now is the LED lights in the parking lot. Actually, it starts tonight. That should be done and completed through the weekend. There's also some LED lighting in the conference center that some has been done. It hasn't all been done, but of course, with this project, there's a quick ROI on it. We think that the investment will be paid off from an electric standpoint. Probably, I'm going to guess, at the minimum or at the maximum of 24 months. And then we're working on a refresh of the landscaping. This will be all-encompassing. It's going to be the entire grounds. We've already cleared out a lot of the old dead brush. If you haven't been by there, you can actually see the hotel from the street now. You can see the street from the hotel now. It's a much safer environment because you don't have all this blocking with trees, but it also looks cleaner and more modern. The second part of that is going to be some hardscape elements where we replace pavers. There's not a lot of that on the conference center side. That's mostly on the hotel side. It's more landscaping on the conference center side because the parking lot is owned by the city and county. But it's going to look awesome when it's done. And if anybody knows Rob Shadle with Chartwell, he's really proud of the sense of arrival and making the building and the appearance of it fit the environment that it is in, such as Franklin. So we're pretty excited about that. And then lastly, some future property improvements that we need to start thinking about on the horizon. We're going to have to replace all of the movable partitions between the meeting rooms. A full refurbishment is around $200,000. A full replacement is $460,000. This is my last bid. Not a cheap endeavor. We're going to have to replace some kitchen equipment. We're going to, because it's past its useful life. And this $50,000 is a stretch over the next 3 to 4 years, by the way. And then chiller and cooling tower refurbishment or replacement. There's 2 chillers and 1 cooling tower, or 2 cooling towers. And that's a huge shared expense, mostly on the hotel side. But $360,000 for 2 chillers and 2 cooling towers. And then, there's always going to be things that pop up, and that's why we have an emergency capital. And I did poll right before I left the cash reserves right now, I believe, are going to be at roughly around $472,000. Is that what you have? Okay.
That sounds. in
So
some
that's where the
neighborhood.
capital cash reserves are.
And
Now I'll take a breath.
All right.
Good job.
well, he does take the breath. I will also just as a point of information for fiscal year 19, the audit that we're completing now, the conference center did send over to the city $304,000. That revenue was recorded to the hotel motel fund. We use that to aid in our tourism efforts, our visitor experience efforts in the hotel motel fund. That same amount also went to the county, our co-owners. So a little over $600,000 after expenses were paid, after monies were put into the reserve funds as required, was distributed between the 2 governments.
And I believe we're putting 5% in that
5%.
reserve, so that's important to recognize too. And, you know, especially as this building is older and needs some of these key elements in terms of the facility components, we've just got to make sure that is critically important. And we really benefited from having that in place when we did the larger renovation, but demands continue. It's just the nature of a aging building, so.
So did I miss the 5%? What is the total on?
Total cash reserve right now is roughly 470, I think it's
Okay.
471 and some change.
That, yeah, okay, you mentioned that.
And those
All
are those are the monies that are used. We do have a budget for that goes toward capital improvement needs in the facility, and I can tell you that I worked with the conference center with the staff from Chartwell on that list, and it's a lot of the types of needs are just toward the aging of the building. There's all types of refurbishments on HVAC, fire sprinkler. Certainly there's been, those are the couple
There's
things that
some,
come to mind.
there are some life safety elements that were,
And,
you know, of utmost importance, that they weren't terribly
But
expensive.
that type of work is funded from that reserve that is set aside before monies are distributed to the two governments.
A question, I think you guys manage other hotels in the area. Is there opportunity for guests that stay at other Chartwell hotels to come use this conference center?
Well, the conference center is open to the public, and yes, part of the strategic thinking of Chartwell is that, you know, they built the Hilton in Cool Springs, so that's owned by Chartwell and managed by Chartwell. The idea is, you know, we. Correct.
Yeah.
And they also manage the Residence Inn and the Courtyard, but that's owned by Apple REIT. We don't have ownership in that. So the idea is when we do have conferences that require more than the 300 sleeping rooms that the Marriott has, is that we do have overflow hotels, and we do try and put it within the city of Franklin, obviously. Actually, the Hilton, or the Hampton Inn Berry Farms too is us as well, so we certainly want to keep the money here and within the family. But no, I do compete with them. Because I'm not the general manager of that hotel, but anyway.
And it's been 20 years since we've owned 20 years now that
The
we.
building was,
And
opened 20 years ago.
what was our original investment from the city into that? Do
The
we know?
original cost of the facility, I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know if anybody else does.
There's no debt service on it though, right?
No, we
By-
retired the debt probably 5 years ago now, close to that. Yeah, so we've got that retired.
We'll find that number for
Yeah,
you.
we can get you that.
Yeah,
And of that 20-year period, taking out the startup year, there's only been 1 year we didn't clear a positive return to the city and county. It's varied in terms of the spectrum of how much, but the fact that I think it was actually before that, but but it's been, that's remarkable for a facility like this.
And just in the
So,
last
yeah.
5 years that I've been there, for some reason, it's been a while since I've gone back and actually looked at the number, but I want to say somewhere 6.8 million was our first year, after Davidson took over and after the renovation. And we're up to, $1 million above that now. So in 5 years, we've done
It's great growth.
considerably well, mainly attributed to that renovation.
it would be interesting to see the number, because
I know
I'm
I've seen it
gonna
before.
throw a number out of 6 million, but see what the investment
I
was.
have a number in mind, but I'm afraid to say it without checking
Yeah.
myself, so we'll
I'm in the
get
same
that.
range as you are, but we can check.
I've got a number in mind, but that's in that range, but I want to make sure we give you the correct number.
All right,
Can I ask a question?
any other question? Mayor's got,
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And, I realize that the Marriott and the Hilton are both owned by the same parent company. And our challenges, these numbers are scary, that you have turned down so many potential conventions. My question to you, have you explored creating some type of opportunity between the two hotels to have a larger convention? And have you considered anything other than the hallways, maybe some type of tent with a heater where you could expand that display space?
We've
so
done that. We've been out in the parking lot, on the back side of Conference Center. We've been in the front parking lot. We've been on the terrace outside. We put it wherever we can fit it.
And that's not been enough to accommodate those,
Well, it's very expensive to put tents, portable tents up and heating units and air conditioning units. As far as a physical building, I haven't had those conversations. I don't know what conversations have taken place inside the Chartwell corporate offices. And I'm sorry that Michael Sanders wanted to be here, but he had back surgery on Monday, so we'll give him a pass. And maybe they could answer those questions better, Mr. Mayor.
but 276 turn downs.
A lot of
That's
events.
a lot of.
I mean, if you're asking me, I want more space.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd love to see more space.
I
I'd
want
love-
more space too.
Yeah, I would love to
So-
see that. I think that
The question is whether we can get there.
right, and, that's a complicated question, so, but,
I understand.
I also think that we can support it with the, there's tremendous inventory going into this market, from a hotel standpoint, and yes, we're part of it. But, there are a lot of others that are part of it, and there's another, I don't know, what's the last study I saw, at least 1,000
There's
rooms in
another
the
1,000 in the
pipeline
pipeline, yeah.
in Franklin, Cool Springs area alone. So somehow, and a lot of those are limited service hotels without meeting space. So somehow we're gonna have to support bringing business to those, those hotel rooms. And right now, there's not a lot of new demand generators coming in. Once these office complexes are being built where these hotels are gonna be built, maybe we'll see some more demand generators. Mitsubishi, I'm not sure what that's gonna bring to us, but we certainly hope it brings us some room nights, and conferences. But, right now, there's not. So we need to, really start thinking about the future. How can we take business from other people that doesn't fit in our space right now? So,
Any other questions or comments?
I have one other question.
Okay.
Of the 276 that you turned down in 2019, how many of those were because there were date conflicts versus size conflicts?
I don't have that answer for you, but I can get it.
Just kind of a guess.
The 276, like most of those were due to, if we had more space, if there was a date conflict, we would have, if we had double the space, we could
It'd be
take
kinda
double the
the same
meeting.
answer,
So
yeah.
it's kind of a loaded question, but, I don't even want to guess. I don't want to throw a number out there that's just,
Fine.
but, sorry.
Christine, anything else?
No, sir.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much.
the report. Good luck on reducing that 276.
I might need your help.
Maybe you and Margaret could help out.
Thank you.
Have some overflow in our house?
Let's go to item 4,
They
report
can
on
have
the,
sweet tea, for sure.
report on hotel motel tax collections.
Good afternoon.
Mike?
This is an information-only item for the committee and is to report on hotel motel tax collections over the past 10 years. And during this time period, the rate on hotel motel tax has been 4%. So the entire period that we're looking at, it was 2% prior to June of 2004. That is when it changed. With no change in rate, the increase of hotel motel taxes from 1.5 million to 4 million then is a result of having more rooms and the room charge. In 2009, Franklin had 17 hotels and 1,800 rooms. In 2019, there are now 23 hotels and over 3,000 rooms. And in 2019, if you also factor in, we also received an additional 100,000 from short-term rentals. And prior to 2014, there were no short-term rentals. And how have we used the hotel motel taxes? We have actually used it to pay off conference center debt that we just touched on, Eastern Flank debt that'll be paid off in 2021, Harlansdale debt that will be paid off in 2024. It's been used for streetscape debt, tourism parks projects, and 1% of the 4% to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. But after the discussion we just had and listening to the conference center, the one thing that we haven't had to use hotel motel taxes for that much has been if there's been a net loss at the conference center. And in this time period, there was only one. It was 2010 in the recession. That was probably a rundown of the collections, and if there were any questions from the committee.
I mean, I would only add the comment that you look at the last 2 years in particular, we have seen that flatten out a little bit. And I think that reflects more hotels coming online in the region, especially in Metro or Nashville area. And so that's affected it. Matt referred to it too. There's more in the pipeline for us. So our revenue still went up, but it went up because there were more rooms, not because the rate went. And that's one of the few times in this 10-year window that you see the rate actually go down, and the largest decrease that we saw where it went down. So that's just something for us to keep an eye on, and all the more reason to be thinking about, are there ways to create options that you don't lose business that wants to come here, because it is becoming a more competitive market.
Did you say we have about 3,000 rooms with about 1,000 in the pipeline?
The
So about-
pipeline that I last saw was a little over 1,000, yeah, so, and that's in the next probably year to 2 years that those could come online. Of course, there's some things that fluctuate with development, but there's quite a bit out there potentially.
Elaborate a little bit on that 1% that goes to the Visitors, Convention and Visitors Bureau. I mean, that's at 1%, that's a pretty good chunk of money.
Oh, yes.
So that's a commitment the city made many years ago, I think before my time, but the county does likewise. So we each have a 4% lodging tax that comes to us, and we have dedicated 1% to support the tourism business, if you will, so that CVB has that to market the area and drive increased visitors and hopefully more than pays us back with the business we generate. In 2018, we saw a 13% growth in our visitor traffic to Williamson County. So it's paying off. Nashville saw a growth of less than 5% in that same year. So that's the idea that we're, and that's how that money goes to the marketing and promotional work that the CVB does on our behalf. And so that's why we track that visitors component. One of the things they love to make sure we hear about too is that saves every property tax payer $500 a year because of the visitor revenue that's generated in our community. So it's really looked at as an investment in the tourism product and promoting it.
I guess the specific question is, what does the 1% do? I mean, what does the 1% amount to? Is it $100,000? Is it $500,000? Is it?
Just
you know,
under $1 million.
Just under,
Yeah.
so.
And the
so
county
city-
is a
so the
little bit
city and
higher.
the- So the city and the county is giving the Visitors Convention Bureau $2 million, a
A little over $2 million.
little over $2
altogether.
million.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's probably, I'm going off the top of my head, that's probably about 85% of their total budget is those lodging taxes that come in and support their efforts.
So does Brentwood and does Spring Hill and does anybody else?
Yeah, they put theirs in their general fund.
So their,
Yeah.
so their 4% goes in, so their 4% goes into the general fund. 3% for us goes into paying off the Harlansdale property, the Eastern Flank Battlefield. There was another one that you mentioned, and the 1% then goes into promoting and bringing more tourists into the community.
The thing we do that is different than both the county and some of the other cities is we do put ours in a separate fund. And I believe that's really smart for us because we are a community that attracts a lot of tourism activity. And at the state level, there have been some challenges around how cities use those lodging taxes, and that are they really using them to promote and support tourism and hotels and restaurants in their community. And we can clearly show that we do it both by what we put in the CVB, how we support capital projects that are in our parks and in the community overall that help contribute to how desirable the community is as a place to visit and spend that money. So I think in a way it helps us make the case to our hoteliers in town and others that, hey, we're using those dollars to help the city overall, but also help them as a competitive product.
I don't have a problem in designating. Matter of fact, I think it's probably a good plan or idea to be able to designate and to be able to show rather than just drop it into the general fund someplace. I was just more interested in the contribution from the county and the city of $2+ million going into the Convention and Visitors Bureau and whatever.
Yeah, are we subsidizing Williamson County Visitors Bureau to bring people to Brentwood if they're not
Yeah.
participating?
Yeah.
When you look at room night generation, the by far the lion's share is in Franklin.
It is.
So it's just the nature of what we have as a tourism product, the fact that the conference center is in Franklin, all those elements I think contribute. But I'll tell you, there are ongoing conversations about how Brentwood might participate more directly because they're trying to develop some more options for people to come to their community in that realm. So that's there's an ongoing discussion around that.
I might make a comment.
All right, Mayor?
Well, first of all, Eric sits on the Visitors Convention Bureau board. I sit on it, and Pearl sits on it. So we're seeing those numbers and how they're spending their money on a regular basis. I think it's interesting that we're number 6 in the state as far as tourism. That's pretty big for a town of our size. And we've got some stiff competition from Elvis Presley to Dolly Parton. So, but tourists are spending $1.3 million every single day in this county. And we've witnessed a gradual increase in those numbers with the Visitors Convention Bureau, all very positive. And so I feel that, you know, we're getting a good bang for our buck. I think it's good to bring that to the light of day is how much of the hotel motel tax goes to do that. But I think if we looked on our return, I think it would, somebody like Scott that's a return guy would probably be appreciative of that.
Well, yeah, my only second thought is just what Scott just got through saying. Are we subsidizing Spring Hill? Are we subsidizing Brentwood somewhat with just the county and the city doing this? And, you know, if visitors are spending in the city of Franklin over $1 million and something a day,
That's the average, yeah.
so $400 million is being spent by visitors in the city of Franklin on an annual basis, give or take. All right. Somewhere there's a good report.
That's good stuff.
Mike, anything else on the hotel motel tax collection?
Yeah.
Item 5, monthly reports for October 2019. You gonna do those?
Yes.
Okay.
Take it away.
On the monthly reports, I'd like to maybe just point out 3 particular items. Is in July, the local sales tax increased by 7.3%. And the amount itself was $3 million. And for the last 5 months in a row, that number's been $3 million, when in the past, we had never really been over that number except for Christmas. So in essence, this is the 5th time over $3 million in a row. The second item is, most items have been comparable for the first 2 months, but we have noticed that the facilities tax county is actually currently right now below projections. So it's just something we'll keep tracking, but we just noticed in the first 2 months that it was below budget. And the last item is we had the conference center with us, is we now ask them how come they have an increase or a decrease. and we had gotten with them, and they had talked about what they mentioned about there had been an increase in group business in the month of August. And that's why there was an increase in this August versus last August. And were there any other questions about any of the other reports?
Mayor, Mayor, did the mayor get an answer on whether, on the 276 that they turned down, whether it was dates or whether it was capacity? Did you get an answer on that?
No, I don't think he had an answer.
All right.
And those are kind of intertwined, because you don't have a date conflict if you have a larger facility.
Okay.
So they may be able to try to give us some other
Yeah.
sense of a little more detail on what drove those turndowns, but.
Exactly.
Because 276 is a
That's a lot
large,
of
It is,
large
it
number.
is,
Yeah.
it
I'll
is.
follow up with,
Yeah, we'll see what else.
with their
we can find.
staff and see if they can give you, provide some.
But if you talk to Ellie Chin, there's a significant size of convention that really wants to come here, and we just can't accommodate it.
Yeah, I think if you broaden that scope to other events, to youth sports events, those kind of things, that number's probably north of 700 events. I've seen something in that range.
Well, and Mayor, you may have mentioned it too, we own the conference center, but also a lot of the parking area too, so if they come back and say, we want to expand, there is room to expand.
Well, you're exactly right. There's a certain amount of the parking lot that goes with how many parking spots they have to go for the hotel, but the bulk of the property, the parking lot we own. So there is an opportunity for an expansion in that area, and that's something there has been conversation about. What would that look like? You know, does it look like a park and ride with a conference center? Or, you know, I mean, those conversations are always circulating around and trying to get a little more substantive information about it to.
In Chartwell's just a year in, I think they're seeing the business opportunities, and so that, I think there'll continue to be some exploration of that. And if you did structured parking, could that
I was
free up
gonna
some
say,
space?
that
Yeah,
is
that's
one of
been
the things
That's
that would
kind
have
of
to
the
be
new
done.
playbook in Cool Springs, is you've got this surface
Yeah.
parking that now is too valuable to stay
That's
surface
right.
parking, and that applies here
To
as well.
this area too?
Yeah.
It does, it does. I did find my thing I was gonna ask about. Whenever I looked back at this, the facilities tax for the city and the budget has a different number every month, whereas the other facilities taxes all are just average for the entire year. And so, but on the city facilities tax, it's got an amount, a specific amount every month versus, or maybe I'm thinking about okay, if I look now at the county facilities
Yeah.
tax, it just gives
It's flat,
an
yeah.
average of
Yeah.
$104,000 every month.
What we,
So what's the deal?
Michael Walters Young, you're up.
You know, I thought I could hide. Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Walters Young, Budget and Strategic Innovation Manager. The reason why we've kept that sort of flat is because we only have a couple of years where we've broken that data out of getting the facilities tax, breaking it up into a separate fund and recording it every month. So I think what we've done for budgeting purposes is to be consistent in that regard. There's always been an not idiosyncratic difference, but a noticeable difference between what we collect in city facilities and county facilities. And you see that, whereas the county facilities is running slightly ahead this year and city facilities is under our budgeted expectations. That's been true for the years that we've been breaking each out. As we go forward, we'll try to add, I think, a better estimate, but you need to have enough years kind of set aside per month to do that type of calculation. And we only have a couple of years that we've broken it out month by month.
Well, there were 6, right? Something like that. I guess 7, really. The county facilities tax, we've had that for 7 years.
I don't think we've had it in a separate fund, though.
Oh,
all
a
that
separate
time.
fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's where it's a little different.
Okay. And
We used to
then-
have that consolidated into another fund, and when you really couldn't track it as clearly as we do now.
The purpose and it was moved for the purpose of being able to track it and get better get more eyes on it and a better calculation moving forward regarding budgeting and accounting.
Well, talking about the facilities tax, and I don't remember whenever we saw the last thing on building, but is it kind of leveling out? I mean, our building permits and things like that?
Yeah, I think we've seen it a little bit. It's still, if you turn the clock back 3-4 years, it's still relatively pretty strong. We've seen a little more of a surge in residential permits. That may just be a function of right now, but yeah, it's leveled out a little bit in the last probably 8 to 10 months, but still pretty strong if you look at a historic number.
One last question, going back to the post-employment benefits, and you mentioned that it is a long period of time. Is that 5 million versus the 20 million? Is that a net present value number today, or is that like future cash flow, like the lottery winner wins 100 million? Well, they don't really win that much.
It's not really a net present value, it's an actuarial calculation of liability. So it's more of a balance sheet type calculation rather than a calculation that is a net present value. It's certainly, it's not, it's not a reflection of current cash obligations. As Eric was describing, it's a calculation, it's an assumption using the industry best practices of long-term obligations. And it's certainly, but it's not necessarily, it's not a net present value.
Okay.
Because we
again,
don't.
In my mind, mentally, I'm thinking, okay, we spent roughly $500,000 last year, and that obligation just quadrupled. Does that mean we are looking at $2 million a year? I don't think we are.
No, it's
So I don't
because,
think we.
well, and, certainly this change in assumption and on this one table that we have we have a new table for, it completely is that, the difference projected between these two tables of what, and Lauren was discussing what the table entails, but what this table from 2013, this industry table, when you look at the difference between the table has men and women in separate categories by age, and if you look at a male at age 45 and a male at 64, the gap between the medical expenses between these two tables is significant, and that's what the difference is. It's assuming these future medical costs for these different ages, and the ages, especially as people age, and that's where this change in liability has changed so much, because this other table had medical expenses for men and women in those years in which our people are pretty much, our folks are primarily between 60 and approaching 65 who are buying this insurance. And this table, this new industry, this 2013 table says that people in that group are going to have higher medical expenses than others that are younger, and that the slope of that table is much different. And that's where the difference in this calculation, but it's not a reflection of what we have to budget differently, because we've already been budgeting based off of who we know, or who we expect, or we currently know will be on the insurance for the next 12 months.
And it says the next item is other business.
Couple announcements. Our next meeting is again at a different time. It'll be a combined November-December meeting. It is November 21st at 2 p.m. And we'll be presenting the audit for fiscal year 19 to you. That's the headline. So you also serve the role as our audit committee, along with your budget and finance committee responsibilities. So that will be our main element. There'll be other items on that agenda as well, for sure, but that's the main thing. So that's an important meeting there. I do have two more things I want to share with you. I apologize, I was a couple minutes late coming into this meeting. I had an important meeting about an appointment of a department director. And I was confirming that this person is going to accept the position, and it's Steve Grubb, who's our new street director. So that's probably not a huge surprise to a lot of people, but we do go through a process, make sure we got it right, and talk to him and some other candidates. But Steve has served so well for so long, and we're pleased that he has accepted the position as our new street director. So you got breaking news. It just happened in the last hour or so. The other piece is great financial news for us in terms of our loan for our water reclamation facility, wastewater treatment plant. We got word last Friday morning that we had secured an additional loan from the State Revolving Loan Fund for $32.5 million. So that's the remaining financing we had needed for that facility. And you may remember we got $100 million from the SRF, it's called, and at a rate of about 1.47%, I believe, something like that. And we are thinking that this additional component will be around that same range in terms of interest rate. So we're thrilled about that. We had been hopeful that we would get some of that. We're even more thrilled to get all of that from that program, which has obviously about the best possible rates you could imagine for these projects. So that's great news for our ratepayers, and that kind of locks down that last piece of the financing strategy for that major investment. So there you go. Budget
meeting, and the 4 is CIC, 4 o'clock.
That's right.
CIC.
Yes.
And then we have the joint meeting after that?
You do not. There's no planning commission in November.
Oh, okay, and so no joint too?
So there'll be no joint.
December the.
December the 11th, yeah, it's something, well, I guess it's the 12th, December 12th, because we have, BOMA, I think, on the 10th of December. Is that right? I think I'm remembering that
BOMA's
right.
on the 10th.
Yeah, BOMA's on the 10th, and then,
We don't have this.
Yeah.
The 12th.
right,
So that works.
so, yeah.
So what's on the 12th?
That's your, that's when Planning Commission will be. That's the November, December combined Planning Commission will be on December 12th.
Will we have a joint meeting then?
I would expect you will. Every once in a while, we don't have enough things, but we will probably have that. We don't know the time till we're closer to that.
So you'll have a budget meeting then too?
Yes.
No,
No, not on the 12th. I'm sorry, on the 21st you will. In November, you'll have budget then. That's the last meeting for the year of Budget and Finance.
Do you,
CIC that meeting that month?
Yes,
4 PM, yes.
yes, at 4 o'clock.
do we need to make this one one?
I don't think so, Mike. I believe we'll get done in time to have a
Okay.
break. Y'all,
So,
Alderman Martin, have a break and come back for the 4 o'clock.
okay.
No BOMA next Tuesday. We have an election.
This is a test.
Some are more aware of that than others.
Whom would that be?
I don't know.
Anything else to come before the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. None opposed. We are adjourned.